The first time I saw somebody spinning, it was like meditation. The sound of it especially. It seemed so ancient and timeless. The madness of modernity fading away as the wheel turned, like I was being hypnotized and drawn in by it.
When I think about the spinning wheel, there's a lovely old photo that I always remember, and it's called Granny, and it shows an elderly lady with a spinning wheel outside of her Victorian cottage. It was taken around 120 years ago by the folklore collector Ella Mary Leather, and she feared that all of these things would vanish. These ways of life would disappear as industry came and swallowed up the world.
In a way, of course, Ella Mary was right, as visions like those seen in the photo of Granny were once common all over the country. But when was the last time you saw such a sight? Thought about spinning and its place in our long human story? Spinning is extremely old. So ancient, in fact, that its origins are buried in time. And its story is human and spiritual, a mirror of life and its many mysteries. But today, so few of us think about it, as if thousands of years of human history have been silenced by factory, machine, and convenience. In 2020, archaeologists discovered what is believed to be the world's oldest piece of string or yarn, thought to have been made by our Neanderthal cousins upwards of 52,000 years ago. It was made from stripping the bark of a tree and wrapping it around a kind of stone tool. The strands separated and twined clockwise, then counterclockwise, to form a cord. This remarkable find shows not only that fibre is much older than previously thought, but challenges assumptions about our Neanderthal cousins, their cognitive abilities, and their ways of living in that ancient, unremembered past.
Well, I've just climbed up here, and would you know it, it's pouring with rain. But I was just thinking that this hill, people have lived here for thousands and thousands of years, and I think that domestic history is far more interesting than anything to do with wars and battles and conquests. When you think about a place like this, people have passed by here in the old Stone Age, and then they've settled here and built long lost villages in the Bronze Age and into the Iron Age. And it's tempting when walking through here to wonder what it is that they actually did all day. And of course, one of the most commonly seen things in a lost village like this would be spinning. And one of the earliest types of spinning, they would literally take their wool, and this is just from a shop. It would have been animal fibre or plant fibre, but I couldn't find any climbing up here in the rain. And they would literally just spin it out on their thigh, just literally spin it like this. And it's called thigh spinning.
They would also utilise things found in the environment. Assortments of wood, stone and bone, transformed into crude and early versions of distaffs, spindles and whorls. The stone I used had a naturally occurring hole passing through it, the kind later known as a hagstone or fairy stone, believed to ward off evil and protect one from harm. And later whorls carved especially for spinning may also have had some kind of ritual or magical element, with archaeological evidence showing early whorls carved with symbols that suggest both the mundane and the mystical, their meanings unknown, and possibly suggesting some long-lost form of proto-script or symbolic communication. Such tools have also been found as grave goods, proving that spinning was an important aspect of life for women in prehistoric cultures, and onwards through time, showing up in burials all over the world. In 2024, a grave found at Skumsons in Norway revealed a Viking boat with the body of a woman buried within. With her skeleton was a bronze key, some carved stones and beads, and a large collection of textile-making tools, amongst them wool shears, a hetchel or comb to prepare the fibres, a spindle whorl, and a weaving sword. The key may have represented her position as the head of a household, likely one of high status and importance, for Viking women were able to accumulate wealth through various forms of textile work, and her burial with coins and jewellery from foreign countries, including England, suggests the rich culture of trade in clothing and textile. Some of these materials could even have travelled to Viking settlements like Jorvik, modern-day York, where excavations at Coppergate in the 1970s and 80s revealed countless traces of Viking domestic life, and textile items, including spindles, whorls and distaffs, were amongst the most commonly found items, along with other finds suggesting the city region was a hub of craft creation. The area is now home to the fabulous Jorvik Viking Museum, where a dark ride with advanced animatronic and atmospheric effects can transport you into a recreation of the old Coppergate. And when doing so, it is easy to see why such items as spindles and whorls were not only of domestic interest, they were spiritual as well. Accounts of Seder, the practice of shaping and telling the future, may have been of great importance to a culture where warfare loomed, famine and disease were rife, and mortality was high. The word itself means literally to string, tie, or tether, and may have included the entering of trance states, perhaps aided by the repetitive and hypnotic motion of spinning, and of attracting or binding spirits to make change occur in conformity with will. Such is referred to in works like the Poetic Edda, where the Norns, deities concerned with the weaving of the threads of fate, may be depicted as spinners and weavers, dwelling at the foot of the world tree Yggdrasil, and measuring the threads of each new life, its length, and when it should be cut. As well as our lives, these mysterious entities could also shape the destiny of kingdoms, epochs in time, and even the fate of the gods themselves. This, of course, is very similar to other mythologies, raising the possibility of both a common Indo-European ancestor for such beliefs, and of the global nature of spinning itself. We can see it with Istustaya and Papaya of Hittite mythology, fate weavers shown with spindles and mirrors, and of course the Moirai, or the three fates of Greek mythology, shown as young sister Clotho, the spinner, who creates the thread of life, Lachesis, who measures the length of the thread, and Atropos, the oldest sister who cuts the thread and depicts the end of life. Plato imagined them as young women, with other depictions showing them older, and from Renaissance times, such figures were often depicted as a maiden, mother and crone, or triple goddess, representing the different ages and roles of women, as well as their association with other figures like Hecate, a moon goddess shown in triple form in her early worship, or of Diana, she of the huntress, the moon, and the underworld. What is clear is that spinning and weaving were both ordinary and extraordinary, and so central to the lives of women for thousands of years that the gods themselves were shown to mirror this practice. Even the word distaff itself, from at least the 14th century, has been used as a general term for the female line of one's family, the distaff side, and may once again represent a kind of mystical poetry. The holder of the distaff is in possession of unmanifested potential, something that is then born, given life by spindles and whirls, nurtured into form, shape, and destiny. The most well-known and beloved symbol of spinning is the wheel, a device which likely came to Europe from Middle Eastern cultures in the 13th century, but with a history so long as to cause debate as to its origin. It was certainly known to exist as early as the 11th century in Baghdad, with evidence in the form of early drawn depictions, but some have suggested it may be far older, originating in India over 1,000 years ago. Whatever the truth, they were certainly in Europe by the year 1280, where etchings and drawings of them began to appear, and in time they would gradually replace the earlier forms of spinning with the distaff and spindle. The wheel itself was subject to change as well, with earlier forms like the great wheel or walking wheel, turned by hand and used when standing, eventually giving way to the treadle wheel, where the spinner could sit and free up both hands, turning the wheel with the constant motion of a foot pedal. By the 17th century, spinning wheels of both kinds were a popular sight in rural homes, their use central to the creation of clothing and textiles for either sale or family use. And almost every girl would learn to spin, especially in agricultural and rural families, with even the youngest girls introduced to the practice, so that by the time she was in her early teens, she would already be an accomplished spinner and able to produce textiles of reasonably high quality, whether from a spinning wheel or the time-honoured method of spindle and distaff. In this case, she may even carry such tools under her arm or tucked into her belt, able to spin in between other tasks. For hundreds of years, countless days would be dictated by the hypnotic rhythm of spinning, like a lullaby of life. On a larger scale, weaving and textile guilds began to appear from as early as 1447, producing cloth of high quality for export all over the country, with some towns and communities owing their entire existence to the trade in such materials, such as the town of Leominster in Herefordshire, where the local breed of Ryland sheep produced wool known locally as Leominster ore, of such high renown that even Queen Elizabeth I asked for a pair of stockings to be made from wool spun from Leominster sheep. Further afield, European guilds turned to even larger projects, sometimes producing tapestries and textiles of religious and spiritual importance, allowing a largely illiterate population the chance to see and thus understand the biblical stories they were told in church. Wealthy families may even order such textiles to show off their wealth and religious piety, with biblical scenes of purity and virtue chosen as a kind of visual reminder of the charity and status of the family. I went to the Church of St Andrew in Prestine, Wales, to see such a tapestry for myself.
So this is the Prestine tapestry. It's over 500 years old, and is one of only 2 pre-Reformation tapestries still hanging in a church in the UK, and it's the only one still on public display. It's actually very delicate. You can press a light switch over here to really make it stand out, but the light switch is on a timer. This is to stop the tapestry from becoming faded, so let's give it a go.
And there it was, as glorious and bright as the day it was woven, each fibre hand-spun by unknown artists. It shows Christ entering Jerusalem, and it was breathtaking in both size and quality of artistry. In every strand is prayer and hope. In every weave, the fading memory of a vanished people. And in every hand-spun inch, the glories of the religious mystery that so touched the hearts of many. But what about the stranger side of the spinster's life? And of those ancient deities like Norns and Fates? Did any of this survive as the Middle Ages gave way to the early modern period? Like much else in the rural home, the spinning wheel was not immune to witcheries and hauntings. In some medieval depictions, witches are shown riding not on brooms, but on distaffs, and further images show the items used as a kind of weapon, here suggested to be due to the involvement of a demon or evil spirit. But what is really happening here? It seems clear that the distaff, by this time a long-standing symbol of the woman's work and ability to earn and produce, was being turned into something threatening by the male artist, something that undermined his perceived authority in the home. Some are more humorous. A woman jousting against a knight, armed with only her distaff, a popular image in medieval marginalia. Do such images show a reversal of roles? A fear of the feminine, symbolised by the spinning tools? Or are they suggestive of a woman exerting her power, challenging a patriarchal domestic structure, the distaff a symbol of her independence? Whatever the truth, the spinner's tools were still of great importance. And in medieval times, even the Virgin Mary was depicted with the distaff and drop spindle, often in connection with the Annunciation, where Mary was allegedly spinning at the time that the angel Gabriel appeared. Sometimes, the thread is depicted as the same colour as her cloak, and may thus suggest that just as Mary spun thread to make the temple veils, she herself would now become the temple, and the veil of the presence of God, which is to be born through her. In even more esoteric matters, the spinning wheel may have appeared to some as akin to the Wheel of Life or Wheel of Fortune, a symbol so old as to already be something of a cliché by the Middle Ages, where a turning wheel was depicted as a symbol for our fate and destiny. Such images were popular in medieval manuscripts, sometimes showing kings and lords dragged along by their power, showing the downfall of the mighty and the temporary nature of material life in the face of eternity. I went to the remote church of St. Mary in Kempley to see firsthand a medieval Wheel of Life, painted onto the church wall over 500 years ago.
So here is the Wheel of Life, and this is an original 15th century wall fresco, and it's still here. That's absolutely incredible in itself. And of course this shows the ages of man. So we start off as a baby and come round into being a lord of the earth, owning our farm, all of our kingdom, and then we grow older and look back at what we've had before finally coming to death. And it really reminds me of those triple goddess figures that we've seen, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, the different roles in a woman's life. And of course, the Norns, the weavers of fate. It's very similar to the spinning wheel as well, of course, especially this large outer circle. The humble country people who came here will have no doubt seen similarities with this and the spinning wheels in their homes. And they'd have sat here and they'd have wondered whether there was a destiny which shapes their lives, whether their coming here to this sacred place has all been the will of God, whether their little farms and their humble homes are the place they were always meant to be at the time they were always meant to be there. It really is quite incredible. And of course, it's no surprise that from the 14th century, images just like this began to show up in the tarot card known as the Wheel of Fortune.
In these cards, the wheel is a symbol of change and the cycles of life, and may also refer to the soul's journey and greater purpose, one's so-called true will, a subtle and guiding force that points us, like a spiritual sat-nav, towards our calling, something that is always aligned with the power of love, shown here by the card's place on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, a symbol which represents the universe as a whole. And here, the Wheel of Life is between Chesed and Netzach, loving kindness and eternity. On the Thoth fortune card, one can also see a star or sun in the very centre of the card, with 10 points representing the completion of a project in the material world, its perfect balance and harmony, and its physical form in the world that we can touch and feel. Oddly enough, the same symbol was present on the Wheel of Life in Kempley Church.
So right there in the centre is the sun on this Wheel of Life as well. And because this would have been used for religious instruction, this would have been Christ, of course, the light of the world. And so this would show that all of our actions in life, all of the things that happen to us, are subject to the will of God, and Christ is there at the very centre of the earth. More esoterically, however, if we look at it especially with the tarot card connection, this light in the centre here would be Tifereth on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So that is the centre of the very cosmos itself. So all these are like planets and solar systems literally swirling and spinning around the centre of the universe, just like the sacred geometries that we see with shells and with various patterns in nature mimicking the movement of the cosmos. And it could also be Kether on that Tree of Life, which is again God, the light of the world itself. And so all of our wills and intentions, our roles through life, just like with the triple goddess figures and the weavers of fate, are still subject to infinite love in the centre. So it's infinite love there is the truth and the oneness, and everything else really is illusions, masks, roles that we play.
If this all sounds too ephemeral to have any real importance, think about what came next for the humble spinning wheel and cottage industry. As industrialisation loomed on the horizon and great change could be seen coming into the world, suddenly threatening to swallow up everything that had gone before, like the Wheel of Fortune had somehow turned and could not be stopped. In the 1760s, Lancashire inventor James Hargreaves was about to change the world of spinning and textile production forever. He lived in the town of Oswaldtwistle, famous for the production of linen wrap and cotton weft. But production could not keep up with growing demand, and Hargreaves looked into ways to improve the process. Some say he witnessed his daughter knock over a spinning wheel, and as he saw that the wheel and spindle continued to turn in a horizontal position, it gave him a sudden flash of inspiration. Whatever the truth, Hargreaves' resulting invention, the spinning jenny, was one of the key proponents of the Industrial Revolution, taking textile making out of the home and into the factory. He was not alone, either. Inventor Richard Arkwright brought forth the water wheel, producing cotton at 96 threads a time, easier and faster than ever seen before, and Crompton's spinning mule, a hybrid of the water wheel and spinning jenny, produced stronger, finer, and more consistent thread than ever thought possible only a few years beforehand, allowing a single operator to manage hundreds of spindles simultaneously, with the resulting yarn of uniform thickness and guaranteed quality. By the dawn of the 19th century, the industrial production of textiles was a giant industry, swallowing up rural communities and making Mrs. Leather's fears that Granny with her spinning wheel would disappear seem all of a sudden a very real possibility. The mills were dark, dangerous and noisy, but here was the promise of wealth and change. And in towns like Preston in Lancashire, the home of Richard Arkwright, cotton mills became both its largest employer and the basis of all of its wealth and development. Some even say that the world-famous Blackpool Tower was built on cotton, referring to the transfer of wealth from the cotton town to the seaside town, where hundreds could travel for the very first time in the new phenomena of coastal holidays, something that was only made possible by the prosperity that industry could provide. One such factory was owned by John Horrocks, who became impressed with this new world of mechanized industry and set up spinning frames at his father's house, initially creating small-scale productions, but later, after moving to Preston, his business developed at a rapid pace, and within 1 year he had built his first cotton mill, and 10 years later he owned a whole series of them. Such rapid expansion weighed heavily on the mind. With working conditions in such mills highly dangerous and unhealthy, with some jobs such as a mule scavenger, one who crawls underneath the mule to clean it, often leading to serious injury and death for workers as young as 7 years old. One only has to look at surviving photographs of workers in such mills to see the true face of this brave new world. And yet, look upon them we should, for their names have been erased by the march of time, their voices drowned by the din of the machine, and their stories shall never be heard nor remembered, their short lives like flax flailing in the wind, having lived for their short hour or two, and vanished in silence to the grave. Surely now, nothing remained of the spirituality of spinning. After all, William Blake famously called such mills dark and satanic, and it's hard to imagine that in such places anything existed of the earlier realms of goddesses, fate weavers, and wheels of fortune. For many, solace from this new world was to be found in a burgeoning taste for pastoral and bucolic art. The audience usually urban, and thus these images show an idealized and dreamlike vision of a world that may be imagined to exist somewhere, over the hill and far away. The spinning wheel, distaff and spindle were often used as a prop in such pieces, sometimes merely to show that the woman in the picture is unmarried, and in others, suggesting a yearning for what we stand on the precipice of losing. In this image by Marianne Stokes, for example, Saint Elizabeth of Hungary spins wool for the poor, a distaff holding up a dark fleece over a treadle wheel. Above the wheel, a figure of Christ can be seen. In similar sentiment, John Herbert depicted the Virgin Mary at a spinning wheel, as Joseph works behind her, and the young Christ walks on in front. Of course, the spinning wheel would not be invented for hundreds of years after Jesus and Mary lived, and so this image, through artistic license, lets us see that the wheel was viewed as somewhat holy, and that Mary's association with spinning was not forgotten even in these changing times. Another common image in such pictures were children, engaged in spinning, sewing and textile making, with a kind of haze, like a dream or old memory, a reminder of the lost innocence of the past, of the quietude of rural domestic life, and of days ruled neither by clock nor factory whistle, of days all too soon to vanish without warning, the wheel of fortune having turned once again and changed the world. In the town of Kirkham, not far from the cotton metropolis of Preston, and once home to a thriving textile industry of its own, the last loom that was used in the factory remains intact, encased in a perspex dome like a museum curiosity. It's silent and still now, and it serves as a reminder of all the triumphs and tragedies of the industrial cotton town. Today, of course, nothing remains in cities like Preston to remind the passerby of those textile-making days. And the world has changed once again as to be almost unrecognisable, now ruled by the motorcar, the shopping mall, and the endless convenience of online ordering and digital distraction. Oddly enough though, many have already grown tired of our new world, seen behind the synthetic curtain and found no wizard pulling the strings, instead finding our world ruled by false promises and growing disillusionment. And just like those pastoral artists of the 19th century, we find ourselves once more longing for something lost, looking back at what came before. With an increased interest in traditional crafts, the spinning wheel, and even the older methods of spindles and whirls, are making something of a comeback. Groups like Spinning Fibres and Wool Spinners UK aim to connect those with a love of traditional textile making, and organisations like the Spinning Barn offer courses and workshops to immerse yourself in this humble and ancient craft. In this way, one can reconnect with the past and the ways of their ancestors, find relaxation and solace in the face of a noisy world, and enjoy making some crafty creations in the process. The cotton towns are not forgotten either. The mills might have vanished from the streets of cities like Preston, but their legacy can still be seen, with names like Horrocks having changed focus into the production of high-quality clothing in the 1940s. Items today considered once more to fit an image of lost days and simple, healthy living, with some original dresses increasingly sought after by collectors. Furthermore, echoes of the cotton town can be seen in the traditional folk dance of Northwest Morris, performed with clogs and coloured ribbons. Here, the rhythmic movement of the dances represents the motion of the spinning machines in the old mills, and the names of the dances are the same names as the cotton towns themselves. This form of Morris dance is thought to have begun during the Wakes Weeks holidays in the 19th century, where the mills were closed and the pilgrimage to places like Blackpool took place. In some ways, they are a celebration of the triumph of the age, the long-awaited rest after many months of toil. And to me, they also seem like whispers of the oldest days. The drop spindle and the wheel of life, the tapestries of time, and the roles we play, both sacred and mundane. For there is still something special about the spinning wheel, of the love and devotion found in handmade crafts in all their forms. As the world changes evermore, taking us into noisier and more distracted worlds, many will feel the call of these things, their subtle, hypnotic pull, drawing us back and connecting us to all that has gone before, and shall be once more, as the wheel of life continues to turn.